Bitrise User Group. I'm your host, Ákos Hontos, and we will start the presentations in a couple of minutes. But while we wait for everyone to load and to join, we have a couple of things that we wanted to mention. First and foremost, thank you all for joining us today, and special thanks for our speakers. Just for folks who are not that familiar with bugs, a quick introduction. Bugs or Bitrise user groups are, used to be a community organized meetups of local Bitrise users with the aim of learning, teaching, connecting, and just in general becoming better at using Bitrise. In case of the in-person events, the local community was the one who did most of the planning and the actual realizing of the event, with some help from the community relations team at Bitrise. Due to circumstances, COVID-19, we have switched over to a virtual format. And the main difference between the two is that virtual bugs are Bitrise organized. We provide the platform, we reach out to speakers, but we take all the input from the in-person bug organizers that used to do it as well. So we have a couple of them here with us today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for helping us make this a reality. We aim to have the virtual bugs every 2 weeks. That would make the next one happen on May the 7th. If you want to hold a presentation, become a speaker, we will have a link for you at the end of this meeting. And you can sign up and we will contact you. Something that's very important to mention is that this is all community content. These talks are not owned, produced, or designed by Bitrise. All other credits go to the speakers. So again, thank you for helping us. Questions can be asked during and after the talks and the chat box. We will have a dedicated 5 minutes after each of the presentations where we will look at your questions. We have a Q&A tool running, which you can see right on top of your typing box in the chat. So if you click that, it's a question mark. It will label your message as a question, and then the speakers will go through those after their presentations. I think we are all present. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the first speaker that we have today, and that is Alexander Botkin from ChargePoint. He is a principal software engineer at ChargePoint, and he is the maintainer of Xe Parse, a Swift command line tool for extracting screenshots, code coverage, and logs from Xcode 11 Xe results. Previous to ChargePoint, Alex worked at Apple for several years as part of their iOS applications and frameworks team. He is joining us from California, and he's going to talk about how the ChargePoint mobile engineering team automated dark mode screenshots in Bitrise. This talk is a more detailed expansion of a post ChargePoint has on their website. And through it, you'll be able to learn a little bit about how you can get Xcode 11 screenshots directly in your Bitrise build artifacts, and some neat tricks like how you can set up / commands to take screenshots from any iOS form factor. So without further ado, I will give the stage to Alexander. Hi, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hi, my name is Alex Botkin. I'm an engineer over at ChargePoint. ChargePoint, we make electric car chargers, and we provide a driver app that allows people to find charging stations, as well as be able to set up their own home chargers and have monitor their usage and utility rates. So before we get too far into the presentation, I just want to bring up that during this presentation, in the bottom right corner, you're going to see a QR code from time to time. If you scan that with your iOS camera app and tap the banner, you can follow a link to find either a source for the information or a website that gives you more information about the topic. So getting into it, why automate screenshots? Well, the biggest reason why we did automating screenshots at ChargePoint was for the App Store Connect page. As most iOS developers are familiar, the App Store Connect page constantly has new devices that Apple will release, like a new iPhone or a new iPad, and Apple expects within a reasonable amount of time that you're adding new screenshots for that form factor. One of the things with adding new screenshots for that form factor is you oftentimes have, tens or dozens of languages that you have screenshots for. Yes, you can try and make it so that you only have the English US that you show to all, but that's not a great experience. So one of the things we wanted to do at ChargePoint is, because we've been moving into more languages, we wanted to automate some of the kind of heavy marketing screenshots that used to kind of be a manual process. So for example, you can see there's a screenshot over there on the right that's part of our automated screenshots now, where we'll be able to get into notifications there and take a screenshot of some of the example push notifications in German. And we're able to get that similar device to run in German as well, so that it looks like a native experience. Another reason to automate screenshots is it provides you a visual baseline. You can review it with localizers. You can review it with your UX team. It can also help guide development of features. So if you wanted to see how well your app is doing with safe area layout or dark mode, it can give you a good baseline. And the main reason we also implemented this was because we have a very small team. So at ChargePoint, we have 3 iOS engineers, Monica Gorkani, Shashank Garg, who works in our India office, and myself. And we also have an intern, Rishab Sukumar. So for our team, we're pretty small, so we need what tools we can to try and do as much as we can. So how do we create screenshots? I'm going to kind of gloss over too many of the details here, but the main thing is you need a UI testing bundle. If you don't have one in your project already, you can go to Xcode, File, New Target, and select UI testing bundle. From there, Xcode is going to generate a UI test file that's a subclass of the XC test case. And you just need to add test functions in there that save attachments onto the XC test case. So what does that actually look like? Well, right here, I've put an example function for basically just getting a screenshot of a main view in an app. So at the very beginning, you can see that we call out the XC UI application. And because we haven't passed the bundle ID into XC UI application, it's going to be for our app, and we can launch it. XC UI application is very powerful. You can use it not only for your own app, but you can also use it for other apps in the simulator. So for example, you could call with the bundle ID for Safari, or say for Springboard if you wanted to get to that notifications there to show those push notifications. But in this case, we're calling XC UI application for the main app. And then we go and we try and look for that accessibility identifier for that main view, that dark map view that we're looking for. And we wait for the existence for about 3 seconds. And then at the very bottom, you can see once we've ensured that we can see that view, we get an XCUI screen to take a screenshot, and then we attach that to the test report as an XCT attachment. And that XCT attachment is going to be in the final test report, or the XC result at the end. So we give it a name, and you also need to set the lifetime. And we set the lifetime to keep always, because with XC result, you can set it so that some of your attachments get deleted if the test succeeds. For our case, we always want those attachments to be around even if the test succeeds. And then the last part, you just need to add that attachment onto the XC test case. You might have noticed that that code you can kind of genericize. You can make an extension on XC test case to save the screenshot, make it easier so that you can just call self.save screenshot, give it a name, and be done with it. So, once you've added that extension, you can have a slightly cleaner code like this, where at the very bottom, you can see we just call self.save screenshot, use that extension, and get that screenshot saved. So that covers kind of how you write a test, but how do we run the app in different languages and regions? Well, for Xcode 10 and below, you would make multiple different schemes. Each scheme, you'd set the application language and region, and it was a bit onerous. In Xcode 11, in the WWDC talk, they announced that there's now the XC test plan in Xcode 11, which you may have already used. And with the test plan, you can have one test plan for screenshots and then set up multiple configurations. And those configurations can be language and region specific. They could be specific to doing one particular type of test. You're able to pass things like launch arguments, as well as set different attachment settings. So it's very powerful. You can even add a GPX file in Xcode to simulate a specific location that you want. So with the test plans, you can have the option to run all configurations at once and get all those screenshots into one XC result. or you can run one specific configuration. So as you can see up here, I have the Xcode build option of test plan, which will run our screenshots test plan. You could have other test plans like for your unit test. You can make test plans specific to certain screenshots, like here's my test plan for App Store screenshots, and here's my test plan for my automated screenshots that goes through the whole app. And with the test configuration, for example, we use it in order to do localization. So for example, if I pass the only test configuration for our German configuration, which is DE, then it'll run only the German test, and then I can get those screenshots out. On Bitrise's Xcode test step, these options are under the debug menu. It's under additional options for Xcode build test. And you can see down here that there's a little option here of test plan screenshots that you're seeing the example code we'll go over in a little bit. So, now we've got this test plan, we run the test plan, we get screenshots, and you can see here's a screenshot in Korean in an example app. But how do we get those screenshots out all at once? Well, within Xcode, you can go and drag and remove those screenshots out of the XC result, but it's very one by one. It'd be nicer to have one way to just get all the screenshots at once. So let's get into extracting screenshots. So with Xcode 10 and below, the XC result had a easily inspected file structure. So over on this right-hand side, you can see two screenshots of an Xcode 10 XC result and an Xcode 11 XC result. With Xcode 10, there's attachments directory inside the XC result. You could just run a script, get all those attachments, and be done. With Xcode 11, Apple changed the XC result format so that now there's a data folder inside, there's a bunch of blobs inside. It's not quite clear where your screenshots are. And Apple does provide an XC result tool in the Xcode command line tools that you can use to do inspection and extraction for the XC result. It's very powerful, but it's not a one-line extractor. And what I mean by that is if you wanted to get, say, for example, this one screenshot out of our XC result, you would have to call the XC result tool, get a JSON that describes all the actions that happened during that test result. It's going to tell you the issues. It's going to tell you the warnings and errors that happened. Then you're going to get an ID to give you another JSON that's going to tell you about that specific test class that you ran. And then you have to get another ID out of that JSON to ask for the specific test that ran. And then you're going to get another ID that tells you about the actual attachment you want to extract. So for each screenshot, you have like 3 or 4 different commands you have to do, and you're having to parse JSON all the way down. So this isn't a great solution. So we at ChargePoint and our intern, Rishabh Sukumar, worked on this quite extensively last summer. We have an open source Swift command line tool that helps with parsing Xcode 11 XC results. And what it does is it extracts screenshots, attachments, logs, code coverage, and it gives you the options to specify what you want to get out. So now with XC parse, you can have one line command of XC parse screenshots, give your XC result path, give your screenshot output path, and all the screenshots will fall right out. XC parse has many different options. You can parse by model, OS, language, test plan, test, and more. And we also have a Bitrise plugin support. So if you want to add XC parse into your Bitrise workflow, you can find it right in the workflow editor. It will add zips directly to Bitrise deploy for you if you put the Bitrise deploy step after XC parse. And it also provides the path to those zips in case you want to unzip those screenshots and inspect them or do some manipulation before you deploy. So we've seen all this information, but how do we get this all working with Bitrise? How do we actually get those dark mode screenshots and all that? So for this talk, we've made a little sample app called Bitrise Screenshot Automation, which you can find at this GitHub page in the QR code below. And what this source code has, it has just a simple app in order to get 2 screenshots, one of the main view and one from the notification center. And it includes a bitrise.yaml, which describes the screenshots workflow. And so all the information that I'm presenting here can be found in that source code repo. If you have further questions, feel free to open an issue or a PR into that. But let's go over what's in that sample code. So one of the things you find in the sample code is we're able to do dark mode screenshots, where we can kick off the screenshots workflow to do dark or light mode screenshots. For Xcode 11.4, you can do this using the new symctl command of symctl UI device appearance dark. And it works pretty well. It affects the entire device. It's great. But if you're still running on Xcode 11 to 11.3, this option doesn't exist for you. So what can you do? You kind of have 2 things you could do. One that you can do is you can modify the info plist of your app in a script step. This would work on both a real device or a simulator. The downside of this approach is it's going to only affect your app's UI style. So while your app may be in dark mode, if you go to the notification center in the home screen, you're going to see that that's not going to be in dark mode. So it won't work great for today widgets, for example. If you modify the default in the simulator for UIKit server's user interface style mode, which BlackjackX talked a bit about in this QR code that you can find there on Stack Overflow, that will affect the simulator only, but it will affect both the device and the app UI style. And so in the workflow that I'm going to present, you'll be able to see us using that in order to get dark mode screenshots for both the Today widget as well as for the app itself. So, you know, we were talking about this workflow is going to be able to create dark or light screenshots, but how do we allow for that to be configured? Well, the way we configure that is through environment variables. And one of the things you really should do with any of your Bitrise workflows is try to make it as much configurable via environment variables as you can, like making which test plan you run from an environment variable, which test run configuration, which iOS device you're going to run on, and what interface style, whether it's dark or light. The reason you want to use environment variables as much as you can is then you can have one workflow that does all your screenshot workflow. You're not having to maintain a bunch of different workflows whenever you have to change a step. And one of the things you can do is you can set default values for your environment variables for the workflow, but you can also replace those values. And so one of the nice things we do at ChargePoint is we're able to use both curl commands and bitrise / commands to run the screenshot workflow and say, I want to get today dark mode screenshots in Korean for the iPad Pro 2nd Gen. Or I could get light mode screenshots for the iPhone 11 Pro, and it runs on the exact same workflow. So in there, you can see a screenshot of one of these ideas of passing the environment variables via / command and getting that build back. And it's very powerful. You can pass it off to your marketing team so that they can kick stuff off themselves. It's really nice. And one of the things you're seeing in the workflow is there's a script step to set the environment variable. And one of the things to watch out for is the environment variable that you set in the workflow. There should be one that you use for the workflow, and then there's one that the API can set that will override what's in the workflow. And for more explanation about why you need to do that, you can follow the QR code in the bottom right to kind of learn more about why Bitrise needs that. So, device language and simulator. So one of the things we talked about earlier was with those test plan configurations, you're only able to affect the application language and region. But if you want to get screenshots like this one for the notification center, you really want the device to be running in the language that your app is running in so that you can get that nice experience of, like for the German, being able to see Wednesday as Mittwoch instead. It also will allow for OS dialogues like the location permission prompt to show up in the correct language if you're trying to show it in the screenshot. So one of the ways you can do this is you can modify the simulator defaults to work around this. In the preferences in the simulators, there's a global preferences plist where you can kind of hack in the Apple languages and Apple locale settings to change it to Korean, German, or whatever language you want. And then one last thing we want to go over before we get into the demo is that Stack Simulator, not all simulators are available on all stacks within Bitrise. You'll want to check the stack information in the workflow editor if you go to the stack tab and go to more information about the stack and see what devices are available for the version of the OS that you're running. So for example, for 13.4, the iPad Pro 2nd Gen isn't by default in the stack for 11.4. So one of the things you'll see we do in our script steps is we run symctl to create that 2nd Gen iPad so that someone calls via the / command to make screenshots for the iPad Pro 2nd Gen, we're able to provide that. So at this point, we're going to switch over to the demo. So let me open up screen sharing over here. Just a second. So if everything's gone right, you guys can all see my screen now. And what you can see here is right here, I have opened up the Bitrise workflow for that Bitrise screenshot automation example code that we talked about earlier. You can find on GitHub. If you want to open this up in your own Bitrise, you can fork the project, open up that Bitrise YAML that's included in the source code repo, and you can edit it right here in the workflow editor over in this Bitrise YAML tab. But going over what we talked about earlier, you can see we have many different script steps in here. The first one is adding that missing simulator for the iPad Pro 2nd Gen that we want. One of the other ones that we closely follow up with is setting up all those environment variables. So We have the API environment variable that's never set in the workflow editor itself, but will come via the curl commands or come via // commands, and then we override the one we actually use in the workflow. We also have, similarly, those modifications that we were talking about for the simulator, being able to modify the simulator language before we run so that we can see it in the whole device language in what we want. And we also set that dark mode, light mode, preference in order to get the whole device running in dark mode, light mode. And as we talked about, there's Xcode tests where we're setting our test plan down here in the debug additional options right down here. And then the most important step to get those screenshots out of XC result, we use the XC parse bitrise step. And in there, you can set a bunch of different screenshot options to divide by model, OS, language, and region. And those will get attached in the deploy step. So what does this look like? So over here, if we want to kick off a build, for example, for Korean dark mode, iPhone 11 Pro, I have this workflow that I started, and I can just hit Start Schedule Build right up here, go to the Advanced tab, and I'm going to build it off master. I put a layer message. And then down here, those custom environment variables we were talking about, the API environment variables, we're setting them up here. So for example, you can see I've already added I want dark mode, iPhone 11 Pro for the Korean region, and I'm going to add this final one for the Korean language. And then down here, you can see I can copy off a curl if I want to run this from my own Jenkins machine for some reason of like kicking off this job all the time. But for this example, I'm just going to start it manually. I'll start a build. And what this will do is kick off a build for that screenshots workflow and individualize it using those environment variables we talked about earlier. So for time's sake, I'm going to show you ones that I've done earlier today. And you can see down here, for example, this is the German light mode screenshots on the iPad Pro 2nd Gen. You can see down here were the environment variables I passed down that were used for the build. And right here in the apps and artifacts page, I could download all my screenshots at once. I can go down here and inspect the screenshots. So for example, here's this today widget. And if you look down here very closely, you can see that the entire simulator is running in German. And I can see my today widget down here in light mode saying Guten Tag Welt. But I also ran the same job for dark mode in Korean. And so if I go down to this job over here, if I open a similar today widget up here, I can find, hey, I have the today widgets running in Korean. And if I want to look into one of these views or whatnot, I ran all the configurations by Korean, my German. And so, for example, when we were talking about the device languages, you can see right here in this screenshot, this was running the app in German, but on a Korean device. So that location prompt that comes up is going to be localized by the OS into Korean, but the app itself is running in German. You can take those screenshots using this workflow. I think that pretty much covers all that we have to go on there. I think the parting remarks to mention on here is all of this information and all these scripts are in the GitHub sample code, so you can check it out. If you have questions, feel free to open up issues. We're going to have a Slack channel where you can ask questions if you have anything specific you want to look at. And I think that pretty much covers everything. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. That was awesome. I don't see any questions right now. I think we should wait just a second. But in the meantime, for anyone who joined us in the meantime, welcome. We hope you're having fun. Let us know what you think of the first virtual bug in the chat so far. And yeah, if there are no questions, we will move on to the second presentation. But a lot of people are typing, so we will wait just a second. It looks like everyone enjoyed it very much, Alex. So amazing work. Thanks.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thanks for joining us. All right. Well, if there are no questions, we will move on. But if you have any questions in the meantime, just don't forget to mark it as a question. We can return it to it later if you want to. But yeah, we will move on. Thank you again, Alex. Next up is Moataz Nabil, who is a senior SDET ad delivery hero SE. I am pulling you in, Moataz. Hi. So he is a test automation expert working on various projects with mobile automation. He has experience in building an automation process from scratch for big distributed projects. And due to his passion for automation testing, he's fully versed in tools like Selenium WeDriver, Cypress, Appium, Espresso, Rest Assured, and Postman. And he is going to talk a little bit about doing Android CI/CD for Bitrise. Moataz, without further ado, I will give the stage over to you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. So just a minute, I will just share my screen, and we'll start in just a minute. So can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay, great. So hi everyone, and thank you for attending my session or our group or event group today. So today I will talking about Android CI/CD with Bitrise, or our story with Android CI/CD using Bitrise. My name is Moataz Nabil, and currently I'm working as a senior test automation engineer or software engineer in Test Ad Delivery Hero in Berlin, in Germany. So I will start immediately, and just a little bit information about me. So I worked before with different business domain like agriculture, telecom, healthcare, fashion, and food delivery. And I designed like test automation frameworks for web, mobile, API using different set of tools and languages. And also I implemented different CI/CD pipeline using GitLab, Bitbucket, Bitrise, and Jenkins CI. And also this is my Twitter account, my GitHub account, and my technical blog. So if anyone can or want to follow me, so just you can take this information from here. So I will start by talking about our problems, because if for me personally, if I'm talking about mobile CI/CD, so it's something like a best solution or solution for problems, or for one of the problems that we are facing usually on development. So I will start by talking about the problems that we were facing with our mobile development, and after that we will go through our plans and what we did using Bitrise and the mobile DevOps. So at the beginning, or maybe from 1 year and a half, so our test automation frameworks became obsolete, and because we were using like obsolete frameworks, obsolete tools, and also the programming language was not supported anymore in the community. So our frameworks became obsolete, and we need to take action about this frameworks. And another problem that sometimes is that we have live issues in the application because we don't cover all scenarios with manual testing, because when we remove the test automation frameworks, we start using manual testing instead of these frameworks. And as you know, manual testing can't cover all of scenarios with that we covered with test automation. So sometimes we have live issues in the application. And the deployment process, not through pipelines, it was like using scripts, but without any pipelines. It's like human interaction also. So we have a script, and the one mobile engineer or release engineer just need to run this script to deploy the application on Google App Store or on Apple Store application. And we have problems with environment inconsistency, like also this point also related to the previous one, inflexible CI and the fragile configuration. So we previously working with Jenkins CI, and every day we had the problems with connection between slave and the masters, connection between devices and the machine itself, and we need to retrigger Jenkins to spin up or running from the scratch and so on. So this is a conclusion about a sample from our problems, is not all of our problems. So from these problems we start to address our problems, and after that we start putting our plan to solve these problems. So the plan is, so we just decide that we will automate all the smoke and the end-to-end test cases or test suites. So we have already manual test cases using a test case management tool, and we have like huge number, maybe 200 test cases, and we need to split them based on the priority, based on the functionality and the importance from the application itself. And after that, we started splitting them in two suites, one smoke test and one end-to-end. And after that, in the next step, we decided that the smoke test will run in every BR. So we will automate all of them, but we will run the smoke test in every BR. So we will run the UI test for every code change. So for example, the developer commit, or creating a BR, so we will run or build the application, running the unit test, and after that running the UI test. And if we have any problems, so we will block this BR until we solve these problems. And after that, we start running end-to-end suite every day as a nightly build or a scheduled build on Bitrise. So we just schedule the build like an advanced configuration with Bitrise. You just need to select which day that you need to run and which time, and just you can run it in every nightly build or in every day. And for both, or for before releasing, so we are running both to get to be confident about our release. If we don't have any blocker or any problem in our application, so we can go with the release or release the application. And also we need to have frequent or regular releases. So for example, at the beginning we had a release every 1 month. But after that, we decided that we need to reduce this period to be like 2 weeks or bi-weekly, and after that, we need to it need to be like 1 week. So we need to reduce or create a frequent releases, but this can be through pipelines. And after that, deploy the application automatically on Google Play Store. And also, this is like our plan that we need to apply to solve our problems. After that, another point is that we start shifting the culture. We start to teach all the engineers or all people that are working in our team about the test automation, the importance of test automation. So we decided that we will go to adapting mobile DevOps. So we start to implement the mobile CI/CD or mobile DevOps, and after that, creating our mobile CI/CD workflows. And then automation is must in all phases. So as I mentioned, we need to run unit test, we need to run UI test, we need to run also automation here. Here is not related to test automation only, it's related to automate the process itself. So automate the releases, automate the rollback, for example, automate UI test or unit test, and so on. All mobile developers will write test automation scripts in their squads. So we are, or in our company or in our team, we are working on a Spotify model. So we have working on a squads or vertical squads and the tribes. So in each squad, we have mobile engineer, one for Android and one for iOS. And we need these developers to write UI tests. So we start creating our frameworks, and we start teaching them how to write UI tests, because at the end, this is our main goal. All of us, the automation or UI testing is the responsibility for all of us, not only for the test automation engineers. And in this point also, I need to say that in this point, we decide that we will select a native frameworks. We will select Espresso for Android using Java or Kotlin. And also we will select, or we will choose XSUI test for iOS or for iOS application, and using Swift as a programming language. And why we selected the native tools in our team? Because our target that I said now, or I mentioned now, all of us need to be able to write test automation scripts, because that we selected to be in the same tech stack. We need to use the same technologies. We need to be in the one project, working in one project and one code base, and because that we need to align together in one goal or one target. We realize that the automated testing needs to be part of our culture and the deployment process. As I mentioned, we need to put it like a stages on every PR that we need to run the UI test. And we don't worry, or we don't need to be worried about the deployment orchestration. So through the CI/CD or through a pipeline that we will create it, so this will be easier. And CI/CD is our new coordination process. So we will implement the continuous integration and the continuous delivery, and this will be drive our deployment or our testing processes and so on. And after that, we started investigating about different solution. What is the best solution to meet our requirements? So we found that Bitrise, they have a huge features for mobile deployment or mobile development, especially. And Bitrise helps us in automate steps in our app delivery process, such as initializing the code builds, running the automation test, deploy the application on staging on Hockey app or on Microsoft App Center, or on production environment like in Google App Store for beta testers or for beta users. And also Bitrise automated pipelines remove any manual errors. So because if we have a pipeline and it's predefined with predefined steps, so there's no any manual effort or manual interaction between these pipelines, it will trigger automatically. So because that we provide the standardized deployment feedback loops and enable fast product iterations. And actually, by the way, Bitrise, that in Bitrise you can combine different workflows or different pipelines. For example, you can create like one standard for like polling or preparing your environment or your application, adding all the environment variable, installing any tool that you need in your application, and after that you can combine this workflow with another one to build the application, to run the unit test, and another one to running UI test or build the application for UI test, and so on. So this is like a huge feature or important feature with Bitrise. And after that, we start implementing our plan with Bitrise. So we start in 3 phases. So the first phase, we are not caring about CD or continuous delivery or continuous deployment. We start thinking about continuous integration only. So our workflow, like we need to push the code, and after that build the application for test, run the unit test, and run the UI test. And if we start mapping these steps or this workflow with Bitrise steps, so we just have like 5 or 6 steps. They have templates for like a lot of templates with all tools that you need for mobile development. For example, you just clone the repository, caching any files that you need to use to speed your process. And after that, install missing Android SDKs in your application, run the Android test in one step. And for sure, there is a configuration for each step, but this is like a highlight about the workflow. And building the Android or building the application for UI test, because if you're aware about Espresso, in Espresso, we have Espresso for Android, we have 2 applications. So we have application under test itself. This is the main application. And we have the test APK. So our test cases like converted to test APK. And we need to build these or both APKs and install it on the device, even virtual or physical device, to be able to run our test. And after that, one of the most important feature also with Bitrise, that they have one step for running these UI tests on virtual devices on Google on Firebase Test Lab. So they integrated internally with Firebase Test Lab. So we are using it. You just select the device name, the version, OS version that you need to install it in this device, and after that, just in one step, you can send your both APK to Google Firebase Test Lab and run your test on this. And after that, you will get the result in the report on Bitrise. We start moving forward in our plan, and we start implementing like CD, but this is like a partially plan, like as a continuous deployment or not continuous delivery, not continuous deployments, because I still have like manual interaction here. So we start adding like steps, and actually, by the way, this is like different workflow, but I append them in one workflow to get the knowledge about what we did. After that, for example, we can add one step for signing the application, release the application, and upload the application to Microsoft App Center or Hockey app, because previously we were using Hockey app for QA or for staging deployment. And we are now using Microsoft App Center. And also, if we start like mapping them to Bitrise workflow, we have here one step for Android sign. We have one step for App Center Android deploy. And also, we have one here for Hockey app if you need to deploy in both, if you are already deploying in both platforms. And after that, the third phase, that's a CD, so continuous like delivery. So we start adding after that one step for deploying the application to Google Play Store for beta users. And after that, we start thinking about what if we need to customize our test result. For example, we need to attach screenshots on failure. We need to like create a dashboard. We need to create graphs from our test result, because that we start like creating a custom solution. And Bitrise also help us in this one, because they have like a scripting or a script step that you can do whatever you want in this step, install any tool that you need, configure any environment variable in your environment, and after that you can use it. So we start adding one for deploy Google or deploy step for Google Play Store. And after that, when we are running, because we are running on Firebase Test Lab, we just like pull the test result from a test lab or from Google Bucket from this test result, and after that pushing them to S3 Bitbucket, create a static website or URL from S3 Bitbucket. And after that, you can just deploy or deploy this or publish this result to a Slack channel to send them to the developers. And this is like a little bit of information about our Android test automation stack or framework. So as a programming language, as I mentioned, we are using Java and Kotlin. For test framework, I'm using Espresso, or we are using Espresso. For test type, we are using both. We are using UI functional. That is like in Espresso as an instrumentation test. And instrumentation means that it needs Android environment, you need Android device and Android OS to able to be to run your test automation scripts on this device. And also we have, by the way, we have a robo test or monkey test, and also Bitrise helps us in this one, because in one step, also with Firebase Test Lab, they have one type of testing for Android as a robo or monkey test. You just configure your application with custom script if you want, and the test starts opening your application, start like random actions on your device, and after that maybe you can get scenario or you get error from these random actions, and because that we are using these both test type. And for runner or the test runner, we are using Firebase Test Lab, as I mentioned, and also we are running on physical devices, and on a nightly build we are running on in every BR we are running on virtual devices, and for on nightly build we are running on physical devices. And also we are using one or the third-party tool. It's a Flank. Flank is like a tool for parallelization and flakiness. So for example, if we have 30 test cases on BR, and we need to run them in parallel, so we are using a Flank to split them, not run all of them in different devices, but we need to split them in like, for example, 30 will be split in 5 devices. So in each device, we will run 6 test cases. So we will reduce the time, because we are running the test, because UI test in general take long time. So because that we are thinking about parallelization and flakiness. If we have like problems in test cases or test cases are failing, so we can retry the test cases after that with Flank also. So Flank help us in these 2 functions. And for reporting, we are using also third-party tool for allo reports. It's including like screenshots and API calls. And also Bitrise helps us in this, because we need to install this tool, configure it, and also we pull it the report from Google Bucket, and generates the allo report in the Bitrise machine, and after that publish the test in S3 Bitbucket, creates a static website, and after that send the URL for this website to the Slack channel. And about our test framework, we are using a page object pattern, a screenshot and failures, and the native and the web test. For example, if we wanted to test Facebook login, so we are switching it to web view. So we need to run web view, or we need to test the web view, and after that we need to switch to native view. And we have also custom test annotations. Like for example, we can annotate our test cases with a smoke or end-to-end or feature test, because just at the end and with Bitrise, you can just specify which test cases that you need to run in this workflow, because that in our BRs we are running smoke test, and in nightly build we are running with annotation. Just we mentioned that we are running end-to-end, and if we are like developing a new feature, so we can running on end-to-end. This is our CI/CD workflow with Bitrise. So this is like a combination between 3 phases that I talked about, or this is like combination between different workflows. So that's like the flow as simple as, so if the developer, mobile developer, or even if me or any test automation engineer like push or create a new commit, on GitHub, we start to create a webhook with Bitrise, and the Bitrise start building the application for UI test. Why is this a step? This is like a predefined step on Bitrise, because we need, as I mentioned, we need to build the application, the Android the application under test itself, or and also the Android test. And then we are sending these or both APKs to Firebase Test Lab for running UI test using Flank and on Firebase in virtual devices. And after the test finish, we get the result or artifacts in S3 Bitbucket on Bitrise. And after that, we uploading them to S3 Bitbucket, create a static website on Bitrise, in S3. And after that, sending the result to Slack channel. Just like if we take a look about this workflow, if you close it in this is like a CI, our CI server or our CI workflow. So in every BR, we are running this one. This like additional or another workflow if we wanted to deploy the application to Hockey App or App Center. So we are start signing the application, deploy the application to Microsoft App Center, and after that we're sending the link to QA and the product managers to know what the next release, what the features in the release, and so on. So just to be confident about the features and the release status. And this is also additional one workflow for beta deployment. So we are sending or signing the application also, creating a beta deployment or beta release, and after that deploy it to Google Play Store, and after that send it to the beta customers to be able to use it. This is the alerting notification. So with this S3, so we are configured, and with Bitbucket, we are configured the Slack step, and after that, we get this one. So with Bitrise, for example, this is the URL for our URL. So just click on this one, and you will able to open this dashboard and the report. And if you have any problems, just you can you can check this screenshot in failure and know what happened during the application. The learned lessons that we learned from this, implementation or through 1 year and a half, that for example, we have Bitrise and mobile engineers. We are getting a great result because we are not thinking a lot in the configuration and creating workflows, because with Bitrise it's as simple as you just create one workflow in 2 minutes, just building whatever you want, building blocks like Lego games. So you just can building whatever you need. Just you wanted to know what you need from Bitrise, what you need to build, and how can you configure it. And after that, you will have a great workflows. So we are building better relationships between our mobile engineers and our test automation engineers, and also Bitrise helps us in this one. Quality is more important than quantity or speed. So because we need to deliver fast, but we need to deliver fast with good quality, and not only deliver fast, and not thinking only about delivering on every 1 week, but we need to deliver with good quality also. DevOps is a mindset, not a tools. Or not tools. So DevOps, it's like agile. So we need to agree that the DevOps, we need all of us to working together in one goal or one target. We need to find the great tool that helps us, and after that, it's like a mindset, not like only tools. Just for example, I will start directly to using Bitrise, but what I need from Bitrise, actually, that's from your input. That what I need or what I need to implement with Bitrise. This is the idea from DevOps or from your team. And for sure, customers are the center of everything. So because that we are always thinking about the customer specification. We need our customers to be happy. So because that we are usually enhance our environment, enhance our workflows, thinking about different ways to deploy the application, or adding more test automation, reducing the build times. Because sometimes when we start adding a UI test, for example, in our workflow, the build time was increasing, and after that we start thinking about parallelize the UI tests to reduce the time. We started thinking about run workflows in parallel, not running tests only in parallel, that we can also with Bitrise add one step for trigger different workflows with Bitrise with the main workflow. So you can trigger 2 workflows in the same time. So this is everything, and also something it's continuous learning. It's not like one stage or one step. That's continuous learning. And every day we are learning new things. So just it, and thank you for your time. And yeah.
So much. That was amazing. We did have a couple of questions in the meantime. The first one was a general question. It was about whether this is recorded and will it be shared later. And yes, it is being recorded, and we will post it to our YouTube channel at a later date. The second one is from Tamás Bozsonyi. During the UI test development process, do you also align the test cases implemented for iOS and Android to cover the same features?
Yes, for sure. So because it's in this event we are just talking about Android, but yes, from the product perspective, we are covering the same features for Android and iOS. But sometimes we have like planned to deploy this feature in Android before iOS, for example, before 1 month and so on. So it's like we are prioritizing our deployment or releases. But every release we have list of features for both Android and iOS, and for sure we are doing both in the both platform. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Ishika5 also commented that they try to make sure to have the same test cases for both iOS and Android. So yeah. Our next question comes from Khaled, who is asking about if Espresso can replace black box testing with Appium, for example. Since Espresso is using like a debug build, are you creating a specific APK for UI testing, as you mentioned, for that reason?
Actually, maybe we can say that Espresso, we are not using Appium. We are rely on Espresso as a like UI testing. It's something like gray box testing, because with Espresso we can mock a lot of things and like we have we can do whatever we need in the application, but we don't need, or we are not thinking about that Appium will help us in this solution, because that Espresso is enough for us. And but maybe we can use it. But actually, we are using Espresso like a black box testing, not gray box only. We are using them also in mocking some things, but we are using it in user workflow. For example, we are creating test cases for like initialize the application, set the location, search about restaurant, add items in the product or in your cart, check out with credit card or cash on delivery, check that all the data is correct. So we are using Espresso in UI test, but because that we are there is no need for Appium, and we are using Espresso for this one.
All right. So our third question comes from Nikolai, who says, could you please tell a little bit about what tests exactly do you run with Espresso? Do you justify that UI only works properly, or do you run all Android framework tests on devices? I mean, we have all logic part tested with unit test phase with RoboElectric and skip Espresso tests.
For Espresso, we have unit tests for sure for using this part, and for UI test, we are testing everything. So because that also we are testing, like as I mentioned, we are testing native views, web views, or web logic. Also, we are like testing the intent. For example, if I wanted to like testing sharing a link inside our application, and I wanted to open the share menu, just we using something in Espresso is called the intent. So you can just like assume that the view is opened or the activity is opened, and you can assert about using this intent. And we are using Espresso and everything. For example, testing deep links in the application, testing UI logic, because as I mentioned, we converted or transformed the UI test from manual testing or the scenarios from manual testing to automation. So it's like scenario based. So with the UI test with Espresso, we are going through all the application like a workflow, and if we have something in need a customization in one test, for example, as I mentioned, we need to test like share a link, we need to test a web view, so we can using, for example, also we are using UI automator, because sometimes the Espresso is not like handling all cases with a mobile, so sometimes you are using UI automator for testing different or multiple applications together. But yeah, for unit test, we are using this framework for sure. And for Espresso, we are like using UI automator also, and especially for testing the logic in the application, testing everything in the UI. Yes.
Right. So the last question comes from Mohammed, who is asking what do you use for iOS automation?
Okay, I mentioned that we are using XCUI test for iOS because we selected the native tool for both platforms. So for iOS, we are using XCUI test with Swift. And we are writing. So at the beginning, we created this framework, and after that, we teach the developers how to use it. And this is the same tech stack for sure. So they start handling all the cases. And if, for example, one developer found that they need to create a custom solution in one test, so he starts using it, because at the end, you are using Swift, and we are handling the test cases inside the same application.
All right. Thank you so much for the answers and the questions, everyone. And yeah, before we move on, I just wanted to add, I really liked the little bit in the middle and at the end about DevOps and mobile DevOps being a mindset. We at Bitrise are also huge advocates for that. We actually have a podcast, a little bit of shilling. We have a podcast that is titled Mobile DevOps is a Thing. So I'll post the link in the chat. If you have some free time during the weekend, go check it out.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you so much, Moataz.
Thank you.
And our next speaker is going to be Karol Wrótniak, who is joining us from Poland, from Wrocław to be precise. And he is an Android developer and a Flutter developer with over 8 years of experience. Programming is his passion and his work. Every day he builds apps and libraries at Droids on Roids, a mobile and web app development company from Poland. He is an active open source contributor, and today he will be talking a little bit about creating your own steps. Hi, Karol. Are you there? Yep, he should be good to go. Hi.
Hi, okay. Could you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start. Today I will show you how to create your own Bitrise steps. First of all, we need a Bitrise CLI. Try the same thing which is used on Bitrise.io. You can see it is invoked here. If you have a Mac OS, you can install it via Homebrew. If not, you can use this snippet, which works also on Linux. Windows is not officially supported. Okay, so let's start. To create a step, we need to use the step plugin. Notice the colon here. Yeah, and it interactively asks us about various step properties. First, we need to tell our name. GDG stands for Google Developers Group, because I already performed this webinar as a part of GDG Wrocław. So I left the GDG. Next is the title of the step. This will be very simple step, so just make hello. As you can see, step ID has been generated. Next, it asks about summary. And the description. And a primary category. In this case, I will choose the utility. And before moving next, I will show you what is the meaning of those values. You can go to Bitrise Workflow Editor. And title is here. This is the thing displayed in this title box. And here, of course, user can change it if they want. Here's the summary. This short text here. If you expand it, you will get the description. In the description, you can use Markdown and formatting. And next, we have a primary category. Category is used when you to add a new step, and here is the category. Okay, next it asks about toolkit. As you can see, for very simple steps, the bash is recommended, and for more complicated step, the only option is Go. Actually, if you prefer other language than Go and than Bash, you can use, for example, Ruby or Python. In this case, just choose the Bash toolkit and use script to invoke what you want. Go is used not only because it is simpler to write more complicated logic in Go than in Bash, but also Bitrise provides common packages for Go. These are for actions performed very frequently on continuous integration, for example, parsing environment variables, files, regular expressions, and coloring the output in the terminal. So you don't need to write it from scratch in Go, but you can reuse which is already provided by Bitrise. Okay, here is a very simple step, so I will use Bash. Next, it asks whether I will host this source code on GitHub. I'm not going to push it anywhere, so I leave the default. Next, it asks about repository. GDG Wrótniak doesn't matter in this case, and you can see the Git repository was created, and we can change the directory and run Bitrise CLI again. So let's go here, and before we run the test, let's see what is created. We have a license, MIT, README file with default content, and the most interesting files, YAML and step JavaScript. Let's open them. Bitrise YAML is basically similar to the Bitrise YAML which you see in your app. For example, this is a Plate app, open source project, Android project, and this Bitrise YAML is very similar. It differs slightly, but the philosophy is the same. You can do continuous integration of the steps also on Bitrise. And this shell script is very simple. So it just echoes input and exports the output. Only 2 commands. And this file is the most important one. On the top, you will get the links to various resources about step development. Next, we have title, summary, and description, which we typed in the creator. Next, we have website, source code URL, and support URL. Source code URL is linked here, and support URL will be visible if step fails. So make it failing. And today GitHub has some outages, yeah, but it works. As you can see, this step failed because I make it returning exit code 1, which is a failure, and the issue tracker URL is here. This is that one. Next, we have host OS tags, which are not used for now. Maybe they would be used in the future. Next, we have project type tags. Those tags are used to filter steps on matching only project, which is here. For example, this is an Android project. So by default, I will get only Android steps. Steps only suitable for Android projects. If I type iOS, and there is only one community created step, which probably shouldn't be here. But if I turn off this filtering, I am getting a lot of official iOS steps. If you don't define any project type tags, it means that the step is suitable for any project type. For example, steps like Git clone or Slack notification. It's suitable for any project type tags. You can type more than one tag. For example, if you have step like publish to Google Play Store, it is suitable for native Android projects and Xamarin, React Native, and all the multi-platform which can compile to Android APK or AAB. Actually, Flutter also should be here. And CLI has not yet been updated yet. Next, we have type tags. At least one should be defined, but you can define more if you can. Next, we have is requires admin user flag. For now, it is not used. May be used in the future. Next, we have is always run flag. And this flag is basically default value of switch here. For most of the steps, like this Android lint, this switch is turned off because it doesn't make sense to execute linting when, for example, cloning has failed. If cloning has failed, then we have no source code, so there is nothing to lint. But if we have steps like deploy to Bitrise.io or send Slack message and notification, this switch should be probably turned on. So, for example, we get on Slack the notification about failed build. But if the default value defined by step creator is not suitable, then users of the workflow can switch it to another value. Next, we have if skippable flag. By default, it is false. But if it is true, then steps can fail, but failure of this step is not affecting the whole build status. For example, we can see that cache pull has failed, but it was marked as skippable, so the overall build is successful. In this particular case, this cache pull must be marked as skippable because at the beginning, cache is always empty, so it will be failing all the time. This flag is also usable for steps like Slack notifications or some funny GIF inserting or Chuck Norris jokes, which are, let's say, not affecting the quality of the build. So the merging of pull requests won't be blocked, for example, if only notification to the Slack has failed. Okay, let's go next. We have run if. By default, it is empty. But if this step can run only conditionally, can require some special conditions, we can define expressions here. The most used, I think, is CI, so it is run only on CI environment, not locally. But there are also Golang expressions possible to use here. For example, activate SSH key step makes sense only if we are using SSH URL and if key is defined. As you can see, run if expression evaluated to false, so this step was skipped. But this is different kind of skipping which we have here, because this this step was not run. It's not yellow, but blue. This is not even started. This one has started, executed, but its result was only discarded. Okay, next we have dependencies. It's basically packages on operating system which needs to be installed before this step can run. Separate for macOS and Linux. This step don't require any dependencies, so I delete it. Next we have toolkit and entry file name. You can change it if you want. I will leave as is. And next we have inputs. It's important to use conventions here. And inputs name uses always lower snake case. Now we change it to name. And this name here becomes environment variable in this step. For example, change it to hello. Here we have the default value. We can leave empty if there is no default. But I will use maybe Akosh server host. And example step in title, summary, and description have the same meaning as for the whole step. Let's see how it looks like. Also start workload editor offline. Okay, it's just a test. And we have summary and description and the name. Now I want to change the title. Next we have is expand. By default it's true and it is suitable for most of the cases. If it is true, then environment variables will be replaced by Bitrise CLI. It basically means that if I insert variable, for example, app title, step version, it means that this value, this environment variable will be evaluated and its value will be inserted to the input, not the literal dollar sign and name, but for example steps like script have this expansion flag turned off because bash will do itself this evaluation, so we don't need to evaluate it again. Next we have is required flag. It drives this batch here. We can also add value options. For example, if you put Akosh for team here, there is a drop down, and we can choose from two values. We have also this sensitive flag. If it is sensitive, then I cannot insert the environment variable here, but only a secret. Also, you can see here all the environment variables are listed, but here only the secrets. Now we can also use is don't change value. if it is true. Then this input is not editable. You can see the same thing, for example, in activate SSH key. And those for values which are not intended to be changed frequently, because almost always user will break something. If they really need to change it, they can go to Bitrise YAM and change it here. Okay, so let's remove this. Name, default value Akosh. Let's remove this. Let's run test. As you can see, printed hello Akosh. And at the end, we have output. Output uses the upper snake case. So, for example, you can put hello message here. And the title Xamarin description is analogously to the input, so I skip it. And to export the output, you cannot use just export like did in shell locally, because the export works only in this script, only use this temporary shell. For this output to be available to the next step, you need to use envman. And as the value, okay. And if the output is here, output is here, then this hello message appears here and can be used here. Okay, so I think that's all from me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karol. We'll be switching to your headset. If you have any questions, let us know now. Yeah, that was awesome. Thanks for including us as well. There might be some questions. In the meantime, while we wait, here's the link that I promised you about the Mobile DevOps podcast. Look at it sometime. All right. If there are no questions, then we will be moving on. Thank you again, Karol. That was awesome.
Thanks also.
Thanks for joining. And our next speaker is going to be Cristian Gonzalez, who is joining us from Mexico City. He is a mobile software developer who's been working with Xamarin for the last 5 years. He worked with many clients in Mexico and the US, making awesome apps and delivering them using the best CI/CD tools out there. So, hi, Cristian, can you hear us? Are you there? Awesome.
Hi. Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to show you today how integrates easily Bitrise Xamarin with Bitrise. So I made a couple of months ago an application for League of Legends. I don't know if someone is familiar with playing League of Legends. And I made this application that only, for example, let me run the mobile application. It's only tell you about your last matches. I'm gonna search my summoner name. And for example, it displays, it has an issue that is only displaying this empty space on iOS, but if I run on Android, it displays correctly. It displays my name, the level that I have in League of Legends, and my last matches that I have. For that, I played 8 months ago, and display here the user. So there are for example, here the images for that. But I'm gonna show you how this app is made. This has an APK for League of Legends. So this one you gonna grab it here for the developer of Riot Games. And I need to copy this one and then paste it and then put it here in the constants of the application. And since this API key is only available for 24 hours, I will need to recreate that one each time that I have to test it. But if I need to do the mobile application to work, and I don't want it to modify the code and then upload and then put it into my application and doing so many things, Bitrise helped me with that, doing this workflow. For example, I override the scripts and I create a small script that is the script running step. This one runs an Bitrise script, and this script is let me see, it's right here. So the only thing that I replace is the little API key with the environment secrets that I put in here. This one here. I mean, I put it in the wrong place. So this one should be in the secrets, not in here. And I put it there right here, and just a regenerated one and then add it, and it's go into the workflow. So each time that I commit the changes, I execute that one, made the archive for Xamarin, then I build the application for Android. This one goes right directly into my phone, and when I have the new version, it notifies me. I mean, later it makes the deployment through App Center only for other testing that I made before, and then it sends a message to Slack that I have Slack open here, and it says, "Oh, your build is here. View the app," and I download the app, and it's ready. So in this case, I'm gonna, for example, I have so many changes right here in the develop branch. I'm gonna add all the changes. I add the commit, add the new features, and then I'm gonna push those changes to the repository. Oh, I forgot to. It's actually install. Oh, okay. And pull first. Okay, there are kind of conflicts in here. Well, let's see what happened in here. This I replaced this information, so this is okay. I'm gonna save it and then add the changes, and then push again those changes. Okay, so I made that one, and I have one configuration on Bitrise for running onto that application. Right now is running the one that I have for the development branch. The workflow that I have in here, let me show you. It's the same previously that I have. It's gonna last for 3 minutes maybe. It's the same that I made. But if I need to do some checks before, or I need to do this open source, I can create this pull request and I can create a new one. For example, with those changes, for example, add new changes in here. Maybe that's a comment. And I previously add in the marketplace, the Bitrise extension that they have. The Bitrise checks. So it's running inside this repository. And before I complete any pull request or merging some code, it creates a validation. This validation goes into another workflow that it's the PRs. It's only to the Git clone, the restore of the NuGet packages, and only set the manifest version and doing the archive for only see that everything is okay with the mobile application. So this validation helped me if I need to lend other people to add no new features to the application and see that everything goes well into the merge into master. So these triggers I previously, it's only for push. I mean, master has their own trigger that goes for the primary workflow. Then the develop branch, it goes for the develop workflow. And if I need to create a pull request, I said for any pull request, follow the workflow for pull request. So this doing these separated workflows helps to not have everything inside only one. And for example, if I need to create only the PR, only the validation, it helps me with not create a new version. And it also, in the workflow for pull request, I delete the Slack message to that because I don't want it to do that. But before this, let me show you. I made a previous pull request. You can see that the pull request is on hold. It's running right now, the development. But I made this pull request before to add the changes to the develop branch. And you can see that in my pull request completed, I added those changes, and I can see here all the validations for Bitrise. So, for example, if I click on here, I can see the successful checks that it create for the pull request that I made. And also because I pushed changes to that repository, it creates a new build. So in order to only have one, only validate the right triggers to not having those merge, and having, for example, if only a pull request made, you don't want it to have only a new version of your application if only it's a validation for your pull request. So I can see the details here. It goes well. The Xamarin application built okay. The runtime was 4 minutes. It's acceptable. And then if I go back to the previous one, it's still loading, but I can generate the files here and the mobile application. All right, let me go again back here. You can go into your workflow editor, and every time I need to change this one, this should be not here, should be I was replacing the wrong one. Let me delete this one, save, and add this one here. This one I can allow this to expose to the pull request or no. It's not a request for in my case. So for example, if I have the Slack or I need to integrate with Slack for those webhooks and the API token, I expose them to the pull request if I need to notify in my own Slack channel. No? So I have here all the versions built with Bitrise, and I can download the application on my phone, and it's now up and running. So I'll let these versions run for a while, and you can grab this application. It's in my own repository. I'll leave you in the comments, and it has also the check for the Android Bitrise validation. So this one you can go and check the application and how it's my application. I think that that's it on my side for showing you how to integrate GitHub and a Xamarin application with the Bitrise.
All right, thank you so much, Cristian. Awesome. If there are any questions, let us know. We'll wait just a second and then we move on if there's nothing else. In the meantime, huge shout out to Karol and the Polish version of the webinar that he just posted. If you speak Polish, then go and check it out. All right. Since there is nothing else, thanks again, Cristian. I'll just wait a second. I actually removed you because there was some what's going on, but okay. Looks like we're good. We will be moving forward with our last presentation today. And it is by Shai Mishali from Gett. He is joining us from Tel Aviv, Israel. He is the iOS tech lead for Gett, the global on-demand mobility company. He's an international speaker, a book author, and a highly active open source contributor and maintainer on several high-profile projects. For example, RX Swift community and RX Swift projects. But is also responsible for other open source projects like Prism, Combine, Coco, Combine EXT, RX Combine, and more. This presentation will be a little bit different than the other ones. Yeah, this will be a little bit different in terms of the format. We will have a pre-recorded presentation that Shai did for us this weekend. He will still be answering your questions afterwards, and I will be pulling him in here just a second. And we are good to go. Let me know if you have any problems actually seeing the presentation. And Shai, you should be able to join. Let me know if you're here. Oh, something went wrong. Just a second. Shai, are you there? All right. Oh yeah, he is here. All right, cool. Okay, I will start the presentation, and then we can look at the questions afterwards.
Hey there. Depending on where you are in the world, good morning or good afternoon. My name is Shai and I'm iOS tech lead at Gett. And today I want to share with you a problem we have with design delivery and a custom tool we built to solve it, and how Bitrise was super helpful in getting the job done and close full circle. So let's get started. First of all, as I said, I'm iOS tech lead at Gett. I do a lot of open source work, especially on the RX Swift and combined communities. I speak at a lot of conferences and meetups much like this one, and I'm a huge fan of hackathons, and I even won a few of them. I'm an author and editor at raywenderlich.com on the iOS team, where I worked on a ton of books, tutorials, and stuff like that. There's a lot of free content there. If you're an iOS or Android developer, feel free to check that out as well. Gett is a leading global on-demand mobility company. That means that we specialize in taking stuff and moving them from A to B. And stuff can be people or packages or anything, basically. And we have a very distributed team all across the world. And the app that I work on, which is the Rider app, has a very small team of 7 iOS and Android engineers, 2 designers total. We serve hundreds of millions of rides, and we have dozens of screens with hundreds of UI components. And I'm telling you this to show you that we are a very small team and everything has to be very, very efficient so we can get the best bang for the buck and have just generally the best efficiency in design delivery and delivery in general across our teams. So what will I be talking to you about today? This is the story of really how we synchronized the design and development teams in our company and all of the challenges that came to that, and how Bitrise played its role in that as well. So we were working on an entirely new branding and look for our app, and ramped up the development on some existing components as well. And while we did that, we kept bumping into issues with the design and development cycles. And I want to share with you some, but not all of these issues. So the first issue we bumped into constantly was how hard communication is. You would get a design, and the designer would ask, hey, can you update the button to the primary orange? And we would say, yeah, but the app has like 26 different shades of orange, so which one are you referring to? The second issue we would have is that color reuse was problematic. When we got designs, we would get a lot of times just RGB colors, and we wouldn't really know if they already exist in the app, and we basically would just copy paste them for the 100th time. So that wasn't very good for code reuse as well. Making widespread changes was super hard. For example, if a designer would come and say, can you please change all of the primary orange in the app to red and all the title to 22 points? We'd basically say, yeah, sure, just let me manually find the 1,000 occurrences that occurs across the app and fix that. And we would both cry about it, obviously. And then, of course, like designers do, they would come again and ask, oh, I actually don't like that red. Would you mind doing another change? And change it all across the app as well. And we'd both burst into flames. Problem 4, style changes were not synchronized across platforms. So many times the designers would come and say, hey, can you update the button color to primary orange? And then iOS would have primary orange some color, and Android would have an entirely different color because, oops, we forgot to update it as well. And the final problem I'm going to share with you is that naming across the platforms was inconsistent. So if we have a primary orange color in the design, it might be called fancy orange thing in iOS, Android might call it orange is my jam, and we have no idea what it would be called on the web basically. So all of the platforms had very different naming. This was true for text styles as well. We'd have some Helvetica Neue Light 24 point with a primary orange color, and no one really knew what they were named across the different platforms. So how can we solve these problems? How can we solve that challenge? Basically start by cleaning up the mess. And we decided to do that by deciding what we want to solve first. We want to keep the design and development synchronized. We wanted some single source of truth for all of our colors, textiles, and design assets. We want to generate platform-specific code for both iOS and Android. And we wanted the designers to have the ability to take action. We wanted them to be able to push code directly to our repos. Okay, seems simple enough. We thought it would be good to start working on some sort of a design system where we have a shared set of colors, textiles, and components, and those can be used across all of our teams, iOS, Android, and possibly web and others. We then started thinking, what would be a great single source of truth for design assets? And then we realized it was right under our nose the entire time. That's Zeppelin. In case you don't know, Zeppelin is a platform to deliver designs that many designers across the world use, and that's how designers send developers designs of our app across all of our teams, basically. So Zeppelin was really a great source of truth for us because it already encapsulated all the information that we wanted to share across our platforms. So if we would get a screen, there would be some element like this label that we have selected here, and it would already have not just a text style, the text style would have some identity like heading, title, and that would encapsulate the font name and the type and the colors. And the color would also have naming as well. So we get some sort of identity and naming across the platforms and across basically our entire design system. So Zeppelin basically sorts all of these colors and textiles into a project style guide. And that kind of looks like this. You have a color palette and textiles, and these can be across all of your projects, which is very, very useful. So we decided to build our own tool to leverage the Zeppelin API, which is relatively new. Before that, we used a hacky version of our own where we kind of piggybanked on the client's API, but now there's an official API. So we decided to make this command line tool to generate code from this official API. And we called it Tool Prism, which is like the one with the light from one side and color from the other side. We then decided to choose going for a templating approach. So Prism uses very simple stencil style templates that let you iterate over all of the assets in that Zeppelin project, meaning colors, textiles, spacing, anything you can think of, and you can create any output you want from that. So that doesn't have to be specific to one platform. Basically, really anything you want. I'll show you in a minute. So when you run the Prism tool in a folder, it would look for a Prism folder, and inside every template that would have the Prism extension, it would process that. So basically, If you run Prism generate, it will look for the Prism template and generate the appropriate Swift files in this case. So we can easily create a colors.swift.prism template as follows. You don't necessarily have to understand Swift to see how this works. Basically, the blue portions are the tokens. We say that for every color, we print out something that represents that color, some static light with a color identity camel case, because on iOS, camel case is the common convention. And we have a UI color, which is how iOS represents colors, with RGB and alpha values. And once you run Prism on that, it would translate it to this list of colors with all of the values. And every time you run the tool, you would get a generated piece of code from your single source of truth, which is Zeppelin. You can do the same for textiles. Basically, for every textile, you would have the camel case identity, the font name, the size, and the identity of the color itself, because the colors are also linked to the same colors we just saw. That would look a bit like this. So since it's a templating engine, it was very easy to do the same for Android. Basically, we could make a very similar colors.xml.prism file where we would iterate over all of our colors and print out the color identity snake case this time, because this is the common convention on Android, and have the ARGB color because that's what happens on Android instead of individual color components. That would look like this. So Prism would just iterate and print out whatever you say, whatever you tell it to print out, basically. And we can do the same with textiles. Here, for every textile, we print the snake case identity, font size, font name, and the color identity like before. That would look like this, more or less. So that really solved our biggest issue at that point. Designer would come over and say, hey, can you update the label style to title medium default dark? And we both would say, sure, no problem, because in both teams, title medium default dark now means the same thing. We don't have to mess around with colors. We don't have to mess around with fonts. We just have a uniquely identified named entity that encapsulates all of that information. So we have no issues in design delivery anymore around that. But really, you don't have to stop there. As I said, Prism can basically generate anything. So if you just want to make a quick web page showing all of your colors, here I'm just iterating over all of the colors and textiles and print out some HTML. Sorry for my poor design skills, but that would basically look like this. So it's also a really nice way to basically generate anything you want from that single source of truth. And I really mean anything. So Prism doesn't care. Prism takes a template, which is basically a plain text file, and it can generate any piece of code from it. Dart code for your Flutter app, or CSS, or React styled components. It really doesn't care. So let's review the goals that we set up so far. We want to communicate the naming of styles and colors across all of our platforms. We definitely did this because the same names mean the same things across all of our platforms and for the designers as well. So when designers and developers talk, they have a shared language to discuss over. We can reuse color and text styles because, again, you won't have leftover colors with no names. You always have some named identity that represents that same color. Widespread changes become super easy because if you just want to change a color called primary from orange to red, you would change it, run Prism, and all of your platforms would get this new color updated across the app. So again, same things for textiles, obviously. So super, super powerful. It's really flexible, fast, and easy to create because you don't need any programming knowledge to make the templates, basically. And it's hosted with each individual app, and you don't have to mess with the tool itself code-wise. It works on any template you would throw at it. The two problems we didn't solve yet, to this point in the talk that is how we have everything synchronized from a single source of truth, and how we can have the designers themselves push the changes to the developers. So let's take it up to 11 and automate all the things, basically, which is really the point of a lot of the talks in this evening. Or afternoon again. So we were missing one really crucial point. We wanted the ability to automate the process of generating code using Prism and let the designers themselves push the changes in a way that kind of closes the entire loop. The designers would change the style guide, run Prism somehow, and we would just get a pull request for both of our iOS and Android and web repos, all of them basically. So to do that, we need some safe environment that could host Zeppelin token, project ID, and other secrets that you may need. Something that already has access to our GitHub repositories and other credentials that we need to perform that work. Some environment that can build and run Prism as a CLI tool. And something that can be triggered remotely via some API. So we need some continuous integration environment, and because we are in a Bitrise User Group talk, you can imagine that I'm obviously talking about Bitrise. So Bitrise was a really great choice for us for many of the reasons we'll show you here. We got a lot of the abilities that we thought we would need to manually develop out of the box, basically. So we built our custom Bitrise workflow that works as follows. We have some workflow that injects the Zeppelin token and project ID. We would clone the project and make a new branch for the changes. We can do that because Bitrise already has access to our GitHub. Then the Bitrise workflow, we just build and run Prism. Prism can run on both Linux and Mac. Basically, Swift runs on all of these platforms, and it would also run on Windows very soon, so it's quite platform agnostic. Then the workflow would commit the new design code and automatically make a PR using a CLI tool called Hub by GitHub. And for each of these steps, we send a Slack notification when the job started and when it ended in different states, if it was successful, if nothing actually changed, or if the job failed. We really want to take this even to another step forward and leverage Bitrise's a generated CURL command feature. And that kind of lets you generate a URL that every time you hit would just run a workflow, which was super useful for us because we could just build a nifty little tool for our developers that installed on every developer and more importantly, designer computer. And then they can just execute these workflows without even knowing what happens. They can just generate iOS style guide that would execute the workflow, automatically generate the code, and create a PR for us. So that's how the entire process looks. We have a designer that updates the designs and the style guides. They trigger the iOS or Android Bitrise workflow using that tool that we built that uses the Bitrise's remote URL feature. Then Bitrise does its work over CI. It would generate the code using Prism, create the PR, and send the appropriate Slack notifications. The developer, all they have left at this point is just to review and merge the code. So this is how the Slack notifications look, and we're able to show really meaningful information contextually because Bitrise offers really rich environment variables, and we also were able to inject some custom ones in that URL that I showed you earlier. So here you can see that the Bitrise build number and Bitrise build URL are used for the build link here, and we also have Bitrise build trigger timestamp used for the time of the job. We also inject our own Prism username and Prism full name to show who triggered the code generation job. You can find a full list of Bitrise's environment variables in the following link. This is how a pull request would look, more or less. This is an iOS pull request. And if I would add some colors and textiles, that's how it would look with templates similar to the ones I showed you earlier. And on Android, that would look quite similar, but again, working with the Android template that I showed you earlier, or a template that would fit your own needs. So to sum up, Gett and Prism is a huge love story. We didn't think we were going to develop our own thing, but eventually we did, and we saved dozens of hours and have a much better workflow right now where the design review and the design handoff are basically frictionless because we barely have any mistakes to make because everything is named, everything is automatically generated, and everything comes from a single source of truth. So that fixes all of the issues we used to have. Prism itself, the CLI tool, was open source just 2 months ago. And it has extensive documentation, also examples for a lot of things such as iOS, Android, and even some web examples and Flutter examples as well. So let's wrap it up. If we have a lot of sources that conflict, in this case design sources, define a single source of truth and make that apply to everyone. And of course, if you have some recurrent action that wastes the time or creates some friction, automate it. If a tool doesn't exist, don't be afraid building it yourself. It ends up being quite fun, actually. Building developer tooling is really one of the most fun things I've done, and having it live in the open source community is also fun by itself. Working with the other teams in our company early on to make sure this is a real problem was very crucial. Super happy I did that because it shaped the tool to be what it is. And finally, we really can't wait to see how the community uses this. We already saw a lot of really innovative use cases once we open sourced it, and we can't wait to see maybe your own use cases. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions about the tool or if you have any changes that you'd like to make. I'm happy to accept everything in that case. Yeah, you can learn more about Prism in prism.tools or on our GitHub repo, github.com/getengineering/prism. And with that, thank you very, very much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this talk.
All right. That was cross-platform design handoff with Bitrise and Prism by Shai. Shai is here.
Hello.
So if you have any questions, just let us know. All right.
Why did you use the presentation? It looked awesome. Oh, it's Keynote.
I have to agree. It was awesome. It was pretty funny too.
I'm known for investing in my transitions, so I guess that's the thing. Will you send later a link to the recorded webinar? I think Bitrise will send it, and I will also upload the slides separately to SpeakerDeck. So you can go to speakerdeck.com/FreeCodePC, and I would have them as well. Does Prism support dark mode variants of colors? It does support it, but it's a bit tricky because Zeppelin itself doesn't have a good way of representing dark mode specifically today. So their API doesn't have a way to do it. We have our own specific hack around this for now, but I think that as soon as Zeppelin releases something that supports dark mode, we're going to add it as well. Just as a side note, Zeppelin added a feature called spacing, which lets you define all the spacing across your app, and we added CodeGen around that 2 days after. So as soon as Zeppelin adds something, we add it very quickly inside the CLI tool, and it's immediately open sourced.
All right. Okay. It looks like that's it for the questions. So thank you again, Shai. That was awesome. Thank you for joining us. And
happy to. Thank you.
That about wraps up our first Bitrise user group and all of the presentations. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today. A couple of things before we end the meetup. I will post a message into the chat about all of these, but just a quick recap of what happened today. Our first presentation was automating dark mode screenshots with Xcode 11 by Alexander Botkin. Our second one was Android CI/CD with Bitrise by Moataz Nabil. The third one was creating your own steps by Karol Wrótniak. The fourth one was GitHub, Xamarin, and Bitrise, how to integrate with some tools inside Bitrise by Cristian Gonzalez. And the last one was cross-platform design handoff with Bitrise and Prism by Shai. So we have created, the next one, the next bug is 2 weeks from now on the 7th of May. We have created, that message did not go out well. I will fix that in just a second. We have created a dedicated Slack channel so that you can continue the conversations that you're having here and, start some new ones even if you want to. You will find all of our speakers there and all of us there. So please feel free to join. This is the separate one. Also, we want to continue doing these webinars and online sessions with content that is actually relevant to you. So if you have any feedback about the bug and what you thought, please let us know. There's a form that I'm posting right there. Other than that, we are always looking for speakers. So if you want to be one of our next speakers, please let us know. There's a speaker form right there, and we will get back to you right away if you message us. And last but not least, if you have any questions or you just want to talk about the bug, follow me on Twitter, shoot me a message, and we'll talk. That is it. Thank you all for joining, and thanks again for all of the amazing presentations. And see you next time. Feel free to post any of the links that you want in the chat. The room will be open for a little bit. And happy building.